My daughter's innocence was destroyed by a monster who thought he was untouchable. I tracked him for months, studying his routines. When I finally acted, he begged. I didn't blink. The justice system had failed us, so I delivered mine. After I turned myself in, prison felt inevitable. Yet when I carried that cold, dented meal tray into the yard, heads turned, men nodded. Some even stood. That tray wasn't just food, it was a symbol. I wasn't just a prisoner. I was a reckoning made flesh. Officer Raymond Clark was the first to look me in the eyes without judgment. He didn't say much, but his presence lingered. Word spread about what I'd done. Some called me a hero, others a fool. Clark just handed me an extra tray one night. No words. That meal tray, warm and heavy, carried something more than food. It was respect. Silent and raw, I caught his glance. There was pain in it. That's when I knew he's lost someone too. Word of my past crimes reached Block C. One inmate cornered me during yard time, whispering threats. I stayed silent, fists clenched. That night, Clark found me bruised. "They'll test you," he muttered, slipping me extra ice. His loyalty wasn't random, it was personal. In a flashback, I saw my daughter's terrified eyes again. The system protected her abuser. Now I was the symbol of a broken cycle. Flashback 2 years ago, I sat outside a courtroom, clutching a photo of my daughter. Her abuser walked free, smirking. My hands shook not with fear but rage. Back in the present, a guard trashed my bunk. Clark stood nearby motionless, but later he replaced my ruined books. That tray, again warm, untouched, waited at my door. Clark wasn't just watching, he was shielding me, quietly defying protocol. They transferred a new inmate, one tied to another case I'd followed. My blood ran cold. He recognized me. "You're that vigilante." I nodded. That night I found a shiv under my mattress. Clark appeared minutes later, confiscating it without a word. We didn't need to speak. That gesture, small and swift, meant survival. That meal tray the next day held not just food but an apple, a warning, a promise. The twist hit when Clark was caught checking surveillance footage. They questioned him, warned of consequences. He claimed it was routine, but I knew he'd been tracking threats against me. That meal tray vanished for 2 days. When it returned, it carried 2 spoons, symbolic. Clark was back, unspoken but resolute. My war had infected others. Vengeance had become a bond, dangerous but real. We weren't alone anymore. Security cracked down. I was searched daily, self-flipped weekly. Still, Clark slid that tray across silently each night. Once, it had a folded note. He'd be proud. I didn't cry, couldn't. But I clutched the tray tighter. That old rage was fading, replaced by something steadier. Endurance, quiet power. I weren't just surviving, I was being seen. Word spread I'd been transferred to the library unit. Less violent, more isolated. Clark made it happen. On my last day in general population, every inmate in the yard stood as I passed. Not a word, just nods. That tray, final, hot, balanced perfectly, rested in my hands. I was no longer feared. I was honored. Justice whispered back.